hope you're doing well today. Today we're going to start taking a look at the pricing objectives and the pricing decisions we need to make in marketing our product. And this is probably one of the least understood areas. It's very hard to do research on this area because companies keep it very confidential. They keep it close to the vest. We know what they charge. We know what their price actually is, but how they arrive at that price, what discounts they're willing to give, the other things that go on in that pricing decision are kept very confidential. So it's kind of a hard area to delve into many times. But let's start and take a look at what we can here with it. First of all, what do you think of when you hear the word price? Usually when we hear the word price, we just kind of groan because we know we're going to have to pay out some money. But we're not always talking about money. There are a lot of non-monetary prices as well. If you're giving up your time, if there's a psychological cost involved, these are all things that cost us. These are all things that we give up in exchange for some products. However, we are not going to focus on that today. We are going to talk about that another time. But today we are going to look more at the monetary price. And again, this is a very important thing that we want to consider. But one thing that's different with the pricing element compared to the other elements of the marketing mix is that pricing affects the top line of our income statement. The top line, the very first line on an income statement is revenue, is your sales. And how are you going to figure out your sales? It's your quantity sold times your price. It's your top line. The other elements of the marketing mix are all expense items. They come later on in the income statement. So price kind of generates everything. Price gets it all going here. So it is a top line item. What I want to look at for a few minutes here are what some of our objectives may be in pricing. Again, we want to make sure we're adhering to the broader objectives set out by the organization and by the marketing department. But we're going to have some specific goals with our price as well. One goal that we can have is to achieve a certain level of sales or market share. Now these two are very similar, but there is a difference. When we have a sales objective, there's a certain amount of sales we want, either in unit or in dollars, that we're trying to generate. When we are talking about a market share goal, yes, there's a certain amount of sales we need to do that, but it's in relation to what our competitors are doing. For example, if we set a goal of selling 5,000 units this year, it could be our competitors sell the same amount or more. But as long as we sell that amount, we reached our sales goal. If, on the other hand, we're trying to increase market share, what we're trying to do is increase the sales of our product in relation to what our competitors are doing, hopefully taking some sales away from them. It's very common, for example, for Coke and Pepsi and any company that is battling out for the top of an industry to have a market share goal. Very common to have a profit goal. Occasionally it's a specific dollar amount. You will usually find the specific dollar amount goal to be in a sole proprietorship, somebody who's running one establishment and has a personal goal of making a $50,000 profit this year. In most corporations, we see an ROI, or return on investment goal, which measures our profit as a percentage of what we've invested into the company. We also can have a competitive goal. Do we want to price our product the same as the competition, below, or higher? In doing so, we're sending a message about our product in addition to trying to possibly take market share away from the competitors. We're going to talk more about this aspect of pricing in the next segment. Our pricing may be set to achieve a certain amount of customer satisfaction, where we want to price this product so they can get the most for their money, so they feel like they're getting a very good value for their dollar. Or we may want to set a price that enhances the image, makes us seem more prestigious, for example. And I'm sure you could think of a lot of examples when you go shopping and you find a product that's priced higher than it really needs to be. And usually it's because of that image or the brand name that you're paying for. Okay, so let's take a look then at how we go about setting a price. There's a lot of different things that go into it. We're going to take a look on this slide at demand and at cost estimates and how that affects what we do. In estimating demand, we want to consider how much we're going to sell at a given price. To do this, we use something called a demand curve. And let me give you an example of what a demand curve looks like. The demand curve is going to say, as price changes, so does the quantity demanded. So in this example, it's comparing the price at $3, and you can see that the quantity demanded is 49. But if we raise the price all the way up to $8, the quantity demanded decreases to 16. So the demand curve tells us how strong of an effect our price has on demand. This is a very common shape for a demand curve. Sometimes it'll be more of a straight line. Sometimes with a prestige item, it actually goes the other direction, that the quantity demanded will increase as the price goes up. So we need to know for our product in our category, what does the demand curve look like? And then what we're interested in knowing is if we change our price, how will it affect demand? How much room do we have to play with our price? And this is what we call elasticity. Elasticity is measuring the demand curve. How much fluctuation is there within a given range? If we decide a product is elastic, the demand for a product is elastic, that means that a change in price will bring about a significant change in demand. Okay. On the other hand, if the demand for our product is inelastic, then a change in price will not bring about a significant change in demand. It gives us room to play with the price and it won't really hurt us, in other words. Let me explain this to you a little bit more and show you how we figure this out. Okay, the formula that we use is what you see up here on your screen. We take the percentage change in the quantity demanded and divide it by the percentage change in price. Okay, now how do you find the percentage change of something? You take the amount of that change. It doesn't matter if the quantity went up or down. We're just looking at the amount of change. And that's what this triangle means, change. So the triangle, change in quantity, divided by the original quantity is going to give us that percentage change. The same thing holds true for price. We take the change in the price divided by the original price. Okay? If this number turns out to be less than 1, then demand is inelastic, meaning we can change the price and it will not have a significant impact on demand. If our number turns out to be greater than 1, then it is elastic, which means a change in price will have a significant impact on demand. Let's run through an example of how this works. Okay. Give you the following situation. If last year's demand was 2,500 units at $10 per unit, and we anticipate that our sales will decrease to $23.50 if we raise the price to $12, is the demand for this product elastic or inelastic? Okay, let's work through it. What we're going to do up here is take the change in demand, okay, and we're just looking at the difference between the two. So the difference between the two is 150, and we divide it by the original demand, which was 2,500. We're going to do the same thing with price. We look at the difference between the two, which is $2, and we divide it by 10. Okay, working those numbers through, we're going to come out with 0.3, which is less than 1, which means demand is inelastic. Now let me caution you here on something. If you look at this change in price, 10 minus 12 equals 2, you'd say, well, shouldn't that be negative 2? No, we're not looking at the direction, which is what the negative tells us. We're just looking at the change. So do not use negative numbers. Okay? The difference between the original and the new price is $2. That's what we're concerned about. So the fact that this is inelastic means we can change the price and it will not have a significant impact on demand. We can kind of get a shortcut feel for this if we looked at total sales last year at 2,500 units times 10 is $25,000. So here we are raising our price, but our demand's going down. If we multiply that out, we see our new sales is actually 28,200. So our total sales have actually increased even though demand went down. So that's telling us it's not having a significant impact. Okay. So that kind of gives us an idea on demand. It tells us what the demand is. We put these two together, how much room we have to play with in our pricing. The next thing we want to look at is estimating our cost. There are a number of different types of costs we need to consider, many more than what I have listed here. But the two main types I wanted to talk about are variable cost and fixed cost. You may already be familiar with this if you've taken accounting courses, but variable costs are costs that change depending on how many you are producing. So for example, the cost of the raw materials that go into a product you're manufacturing, that's a variable cost. It will depend on how much you make. A fixed cost doesn't change. For example, your rent is a fixed cost. Your salaried employees are a fixed cost. Okay, so we can divide up our costs that way, fixed and variable. And it's important to understand that as we start looking at some different ways we can analyze our demand and our cost and how it affects us. The first method we're going to look at, and this is one we'll look at in more depth, is called a break-even analysis. And with a break-even analysis, we are going to figure out how much we need to produce of a product in order to cover all of our costs. Now there's two different ways to compute a break-even analysis, to compute a break-even. If you are already familiar with break-even, if you've done it before, stick with whatever method you learned. It's fine, it'll work. Okay, any of them are fine, it doesn't matter, whichever one's easiest for you. The first one I'm going to show you involves setting our revenues equal to our costs. Okay, so our revenues are price times quantity, and our costs are our total fixed cost plus our variable cost times quantity. Remember I said that our variable cost changes depending on how many we sell. So in this example, our selling price is $100, our variable cost is $60, and our total fixed cost is $1,000. We're going to plug those in to the formula, and we're solving for Q, or quantity. We're trying to find out how much we need to produce in order to break even, in order to cover all of our cost. By doing that, we end up with 100Q equals 1,000 plus 60Q. Moving our 60Q over to the other side, we subtract it from both sides, we end up with 40Q equals 1,000, divide both sides by 40, and our quantity that we need to break even is 25. Now sometimes we'll be asked for the break-even point in dollars. All we do to get that is multiply the quantity times the selling price. So that would be 2,500. The second way we do a break-even is called a fixed cost contribution. We look at our fixed cost. In this example, it's $10,000. Our price is $1.50. Our variable cost is $1. We figure out that if we subtract our variable cost from our price, okay, $1.50 minus $1, that leaves 50 cents per product, 50 cents to cover our fixed cost. So we are going to divide our fixed cost, which is that $10,000, by 50 cents. So our break-even point in this example is 20,000 units. What if we had a special target profit we wanted to hit, something else we wanted to address? In that case, we would just treat our profit that we want, our target profit, as part of a fixed cost. We just add it in with that, and it'll tell us how much we need to sell in order to cover the fixed cost and our profit, desired profit. Okay. Then let's go back to one other method. It's called a marginal analysis, and I'm not going to go through the example with you. It can get a little complicated and hard to work out. But the goal of marginal analysis is different than with a break-even. With a break-even, we're trying to cover our costs. With a marginal analysis, our goal is to maximize profit. Now, if you've heard the term marginal analysis before, or the word marginal, you probably know that that means at one more product or at the next level, how will things change? In this case, when we do a marginal analysis for pricing, we look at the next price point. Okay, we usually will have, say, 10 different price points we're considering. Maybe $10, $15, $19, $24, so on. If we go to the next price point, how will that affect our demand? How will that affect our cost? And most importantly, how will it affect our profits? When you see marginal profits written, it's kind of disconcerting because marginal profits are going to be written as a very small number. We actually want to pick the marginal profit or the price point where marginal profit is 0 or the smallest positive number. The reason for that is the marginal tells us how much it changed. Okay, it's not giving us a total figure, it's telling us the amount of change. So as long as marginal profit is still positive, it means our profits are increasing. And what happens with marginal profit, as with almost everything, it's going to be a curve effect, and it's going to slow down and peak and then start decreasing. Okay, when marginal profit is 0, that means it's at its peak. It's not going to go up anymore. It's going to start decreasing after that. Many times you're not going to find a price point where it's going to hit 0. So you want to go where it's still increasing. It's increasing, the smallest positive. At the next point, it's going to start going down. Okay, so you pick the price point where marginal profit is 0 or the smallest positive number. Okay, so let's try and sum up what we've talked about here today. Pricing decisions affect every area of a business. It's going to affect our demand. It's going to affect the way we design our package. If we price our product very high, trying to get that image enhancement that we talked about, the product has to reflect it. We don't want a cheap-looking product. We want something that looks a little more luxurious and fancy. Marketers need to carefully understand cost, demand, and profit requirements in order to be effective. If we don't account for all the costs that we have, whether they're kind of hidden or they're the very obvious costs, we're going to end up losing money in the long run. So sometimes we hear that marketing people don't need to be concerned about numbers. Totally false. Everything we do has to be justified financially, especially in the pricing area, because the price has to account for all costs, whether they're marketing incurred or not, and still make the profit requirements of the organization. Next time we'll talk about some different strategies that we can use in pricing. Have a good day.